In 2007, a young engineer walked into the Facebook offices in Palo Alto and applied for a job. He was rejected. They didn't want him. 7 years later, he sold his company to that same Facebook for $19 billion. And he signed the papers at the welfare office where his mother used to take him as a child. This is the story of Jan Koum, and almost nobody knows it. Jan Koum was born in 1976 in a small village outside Kyiv, Ukraine. His family had almost nothing. His home had no hot water. His father worked construction. His mother cleaned houses. There was no money for extras, barely enough for necessities. In 1992, when Jan was 16 years old, his mother made a decision that would change everything. She packed what little they had and moved the family to Mountain View, California. They came with almost no money and spoke almost no English. To survive, his mother cleaned houses and Jan worked as a grocery store sweeper. They were so poor that they relied on government food assistance just to eat. Jan would go with his mother to the welfare office in San Jose, the same office he would one day return to as a billionaire. Jan had no computer at home, but he was desperate to learn. He bought used computer books from a second-hand store and taught himself programming by reading them cover to cover, alone, in his room. No classes, no tutor, no guidance, just a kid and a stack of books and a hunger to understand how things worked. By the time he was 18, he was good enough to start hacking into networks, not maliciously, but to learn. He found his way into online communities where programmers shared knowledge, and through those communities, he started to develop real skills. In 1997, Jan got a job at a small startup called Ernst & Young doing security testing. It was his first real step into the tech world. And then, a year later, something happened that would shape the next decade of his life. He met Brian Acton, and he got a job at Yahoo. Jan spent 9 years at Yahoo. 9 years learning how to build products at scale, how to handle millions of users, how to think about technology as something people actually use every day. He became one of their best engineers, but by 2007, he was burned out. He and his friend Brian Acton both left Yahoo at the same time. And then came the rejections. Jan applied to Facebook, rejected. Brian applied to Facebook, rejected. They both applied to Twitter, rejected again. Two of the most talented engineers in Silicon Valley couldn't get hired anywhere. So they decided to build something themselves. In January 2009, Jan bought an iPhone, and he immediately saw something that nobody else had figured out yet. The App Store had just launched, and the idea of apps that could show your status, available, busy, at the gym, on a call, seemed obvious and powerful to him. He called his idea WhatsApp, a play on the phrase, "What's up?" The first version crashed constantly. Nobody used it. Jan almost gave up. But then Apple released push notifications, the ability for apps to send alerts, even when they weren't open. And Jan realized something. If you send a message and get a notification back, that's not a status app anymore. That's a messaging app. He pivoted immediately. Within months, WhatsApp was growing, not just in America, everywhere. In countries where SMS was expensive, WhatsApp was free. In Brazil, India, Europe, the Middle East, people were downloading it by the millions. It solved a real problem for real people all over the world. Jan and Brian had a strict philosophy: no ads, ever. They had both worked in advertising at Yahoo and hated what it did to products. WhatsApp would charge $1 a year and nothing else. No data selling, no targeted advertising, just a clean, simple, fast messaging app. By 2013, WhatsApp had 200 million active users, with a team of just 50 people. 50. Most tech companies have hundreds of engineers just to maintain that kind of infrastructure. Jan ran a tight, focused, disciplined operation. Mark Zuckerberg noticed. In February 2014, Facebook acquired WhatsApp for $19 billion. At the time, it was the largest acquisition of a venture-backed company in history. Jan Koum personally received around $6.5 billion, and on the day he signed the papers, he drove to the welfare office in San Jose, where he and his mother used to go to pick up food stamps. He leaned against the wall outside, and he signed the documents there. Not in a boardroom, not at a fancy restaurant, at a welfare office, because he never forgot where he came from. Jan Koum didn't have a famous last name. He didn't go to Stanford. He didn't come from money. He came from a village outside Kyiv with no hot water, moved to America with nothing, taught himself to code from used books, got rejected by the company he eventually sold to for $19 billion, and built one of the most used apps in human history. Today, WhatsApp has over 2 billion users. It is used in almost every country on Earth. And it was built by a kid who learned to code alone in his room because he couldn't afford a computer. The man who Facebook rejected built the company Facebook paid $19 billion to own. And he signed the papers at a welfare office. Because that's who Jan Koum is.